Okay, well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining. This is the Carpinteria Birdwatchers meeting for October 21st, 2021. I have a few quick announcements before we get going. So it looks like we do have some more folks present, but their cameras are off, which is fine. You know, you can participate that way. And let's see, for announcements, we will be having a group outing of Carpinteria Birdwatchers at the Carpinteria Bluffs this Saturday. So you can meet at the Bayard Avenue parking at 8 a.m. and we will go have a fun meeting and a fun walk. And there's details about that on the blog at carpbirdwatchers.org. And also the other announcement is that the Christmas bird count is coming. Hey, Brody. So what is your background, Brody? It looks like you've graphed something interesting looking.
It's sort of just like a chart, sort of. I thought that would be appropriate for it.
Oh yeah, because we're keeping score. We're talking about big years.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. The Christmas bird count, it is coming up. We will hold it this year. It will be on Saturday, December 18th. And we're just getting started on organizing it, but look for an update about that. And I encourage all of you to participate. It should be a lot of fun. Okay, so with that out of the way, just to introduce people, Tom Beland is your co-host, and he's visible there. And then our special guest for today is Nicole Koeltzow. Am I pronouncing that right? Close enough. Okay, so Nicole has graciously agreed to be part of our meeting and talk about her 2018 North American Big Year, or ABA Big Year. And I'm very happy about that. I'm excited to talk with her about it. So in the interest of saving time, because I want there to be time for people to answer questions at the end, I'm going to ask you to share, like normally we would share about the fun birds we'd seen recently now. Save that for the end. If we have time at the end, you can share about the fun birds you've been seeing. So if everyone is okay with that, I'm going to just go ahead and mush on, and we'll get into the meeting proper. And I'm watching the clock even closer than usual. You know, I always go over, but I'm really focused this time on trying to stay on task and get in through the meeting quickly. Tom, can you go ahead and just keep admitting people as they show up? Thanks. Okay, Brody, I see you have your hand up. If it's very important, you can share something quick.
I was just going to ask, what time is the Carp Bluffs?
It's at 8 a.m.
Okay, thank you.
And more details about that are on the carpbirdwatchers.org website, so you can check that out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. Nicole, you're currently muted, so if I can ask you to unmute so I can ask you questions and people can hear you. And there, looks like you did it. That's great. Can you say something so they hear you?
Well, I hope everybody's out there birding with the fall migration.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that is very true. That's what I was doing earlier today. So again, Nicole, I already mentioned, so you were the winning North American Big Year birder in 2018. I mean, I know you've done a lot of other things besides that, but that was the main thing I was going to talk about in this meeting. You know, I started off, I was going to talk about big years and big sits and big days. And then when, we found out you were willing to participate, I'm like, oh, we're just going to talk about Nicole's big year because that's a lot more interesting. So let's see, I just want to recap a little bit about your history as a birder. So I read a profile of you on eBird, and it said you had started birding in 2011. Is that more or less right?
Yeah, like I started keeping a list in 2011, really.
And that you had started using eBird around 2014. Does that also sound roughly right?
That's when I kind of found out about it. Yep.
Okay. And before your 2018 big year, it's like you were already pretty active. Like you were out there with a substantial list and traveling around. Is that reasonably correct? Were you sort of into it even before that?
I was definitely into it. Yeah. So I started in 2011. I was living in Australia. And I remembered from my ornithology that there was like this 700 club. And so I was like, well, I'll just keep a list because I don't know when I'll be back in Australia. And, I would take notes. I would even doodle some of the pictures and of the birds. And because I didn't have a very good lens, I only had a 55 to 250 at that point, and they're still pretty small. And so yeah, and then I came back to the States, and after traveling around the world a little bit, and um, fell into some groups with people that birded, and went on my first pelagic out of Florida, and found out about eBird. And then I love lists anyways, so having it all in one place, and then how it's evolved with the maps and everything, and I love maps as well. So yeah, eBird is amazing. It's awesome.
I could not agree more. That is something I spend most of my day, it seems, sometimes looking at eBird and planning where I'm going to go and what I'm going to look for. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen then, because I prepared a slideshow that I know you nice enough to look at earlier, so you kind of have an idea where we're going. But for everyone else's benefit, what I did was I went through the eBird photos from Nicole's 2018 big year, just in chronological order from the beginning. And I picked out a bunch of them that I thought were sort of interesting or that I wanted to ask her questions about. So we're going to kind of go through those and talk about her year. So these, again, these are a very small sample of the photos she had there. And the photos are, I'm sure, a very small sample of the birds she saw and the places she went. So we filtered it way down to a very condensed version, but it's my hope that to some degree it sort of gives an idea of what that year was like, and we can kind of talk about the whole process. So is that cool with everyone? All right, I see nods. Okay, let me go ahead and share the screen. All right, and I have helpfully gone a little further, but we'll start off at the beginning. This, I'm not sure how readable this is going to be on people's screens, but this is a screenshot I took from the Wikipedia article on big years. And it basically shows the current rankings of ABA big year birders for all time. And, I'm, again, very happy that, Nicole, that you were willing to join us and talk about your experiences, because you're not just on this list, like you're way up on this list. There's basically one other person who has had more species in the expanded ABA area than you have. That's John Weigel, I guess his name is pronounced, from Australia, who's done it twice. He did it a couple of years before your big year, and then he did it again in 2019. But you are super close, and everybody else who has ever tried to do a North American big year is somewhere below you in those rankings, somewhere below what you did in 2018. So I'm very impressed. And, I as I said, I'd love to talk with you more about it. I am kind of curious, when I look at a chart like this, there's just one line representing each of these big year attempts. And there's got to be so much, drama and exhaustion and effort and time. It's a whole year of a person's life, that's being summarized in that one number. And I can only imagine that for you looking at this, it must have even more resonance. And I'm just kind of curious, when you look at these rankings, you see your place in the rankings, or you see these other birders who presumably you've run into a lot of these out in the field. What does it mean to you? What is this? I don't know, I'm curious how it strikes you. Is it just a bunch of numbers, or does it mean more than that?
Well, I kind of like to stay in the background. Like people, even today, this year, I've had some people, I would just say my first name, because I learned really quickly during my big year. If I said Nicole Koeltzow, then people are like, wait, are you doing a big year? Because they were tracking who's in the top. And I would be like, yeah. And so now I just go with Nicole. And then some people do figure it out. Wait a second, have you done a big year? And then I was like, darn it, I'm still getting thought out, picked out. And so I don't know. It's fine to be in the spotlight, but at the same time, I'm like, it's okay. Because sometimes, especially like on pelagics, when it happened, when I was on the boat, then people just wanted to chat about my whole experience. Like, where'd you start? And what's your favorite bird? And have you seen this bird? And then I'm like, but I really need this flesh-footed shearwater. That's why I'm on this boat. I would love to talk to you, and I would, try to talk, but also I'm still wanting to help find the birds and see them too. Yeah. So, and not miss one. But
well, I can confirm from personal experience. I think when I went through these photos, I realized I'd been on one of your pelagic trips, not in or I guess in 2018, one of your 2018 pledge trips, I was on the boat. I had no idea you were on the boat or that, there was a big earbirder on the boat. And then I think the time since then, the one time when I first ran into you out in the field birding, again, I had no idea that you were, a big earbirder or that you were, at that level. We were just talking about the birds you were trying to see, and we were, looking for where they were. So that definitely is working. You're keeping yourself in the background quite effectively in the field, as far as my 2 data points can confirm.
Okay, good. Because some people don't like big earbirders, and so I don't really want to say because people like that are big earbirders like push through and try to get ahead of the group and see the bird. But I'm just like, we're all here to see it, and as long as we don't spook the bird, we can all hopefully see the bird.
All right, well, let's go ahead and look at some of your big ear birds. So this, I think, was the first photo in eBird from January 1st of your ABA big year. And I have two comments on this photo. One is I'm really impressed as someone who has tried to take, identification shots of a golden crowned kinglet. This is a really good ID shot of a golden crowned kinglet. It's really hard to get something that actually shows them that well. So I'm impressed. And I'm curious, why did you start your year off in Pennsylvania? I mean, what was it that you were trying to achieve at that point? I know you didn't really start, full on doing your ABA big year until later, but what was going on in January?
Okay, so I had met up with Ian, who lives in Pennsylvania, and we had just did some birding, and we helped out with the Christmas bird count. And then we were just going back to Pennsylvania because I didn't have 100 birds for the state. And so he was going to help me get 100 birds in the wintertime in the state. And so we started together on January 1st. And I kind of talked him into like, let's do a big day in Pennsylvania.
Wow, that's really interesting. So yeah. I'm going to skip forward now to January 20th. And you're up in Canada, in New Brunswick. And so I looked it up because I didn't know what a missile thrush was. But this bird, apparently, this was the first North American record, was this bird back in December, the previous December. So it was this, very important vagrant that was still hanging around in January, and you went to see it. So is that correct? Or have I got that right?
Yeah, I went to see it on January 20th. But backstory is like before January started, I had some birding friends, Ian was one of them, that were like, okay, we're going to go up into New Brunswick and get this bird. And I had 4 different like groups of people that we were going to go and get this bird, and they all fell through. And I was just like, okay, this bird, if I don't go and see it, it's going to be like, the missile thrush, like I didn't even go for it. And technically it was only 11 hours from where I was at, then 16 to go back home to Georgia. So in my mind, that was a better scenic route to go and get the bird.
Yeah, so this is you're just doing this by car. You're just driving yourself there and.
Yeah. And so I was looking for the barnacle goose because my goal was to just get 700 birds cumulatively. And I was like, I believe I was 636 cumulatively before that. So I was wanting to try to get to the 700 club. And the barnacle goose for 2.5 days in Connecticut, I was looking for it. And it really is a wild goose chase. And at lunch, I looked on my phone. I'm like, okay, what's the weather like in New Brunswick? 42 degrees and sunny. I'm going to go get the long-eared owl because some people in Connecticut shared with me where one was being seen. And that was a life bird for me. So I went and got that. And then I started driving north and got to Portland, Maine about midnight, slept in my van for 5 hours, woke up at 5 and started driving again for the border. And I remember Neil was talking about sometimes he had trouble crossing into Canada. And I'm like, oh gosh, my reason is to go see this missile thrush. And I wonder if they're going to let me in. And I'm like, I know a lot of people are going. And so I was like, I'm just going to be honest. I'm going for this missile thrush. And the guy's like, oh, you're going for that bird. Yeah, a lot of your compadres are going and getting this bird and seeing it and stuff. And I'm like, have you gone? Because he kind of knew about this bird. And he was like, oh, no. And he was literally like 2.5 hours from it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it had snowed that morning. And I drove up, and there's all these pins, and it's a little bit of like you have to figure out where the tree is at. And I stopped where I thought was where they had been seen, and I thought it was at this person's house behind, like in their backyard. So I was all prepared to walk up to this house and ring the doorbell and be like, hi, I was just wondering if the missile thrush is in your backyard. But there was another Canadian that was going out to his from his garage, and he's like, he saw my camera and my binoculars, and he's like, are you looking for that bird? And I was like, yes. And so he actually told me what tree it was in, and also told me where Peter lived, who was the one that saw the bird. And I heard his podcast about the bird, and luck as have it, he accidentally didn't submit the day that I actually decided to go for the bird. But when I got to the border, I had a friend check really quickly before I jumped across, and he said, oh yeah, it was seen yesterday and today. So I was like, oh, thank goodness. And so I'm driving up, and I get there about 2 in the afternoon. I stopped at Tim Hortons, got some food because I was going to eat lunch. I hadn't stopped yet. There was no places. And I was like, I'll just look for like a half an hour, and then I'll come back and eat lunch. So I would say it was like more like an hour and a half. I don't really know, because it doesn't really matter, because I got the bird. But when I saw the bird and got a photograph, it's like almost anticlimactic, because it's like, oh, hi, no high five, no one around, not even any other Canadians that I could just bombard and tell them my story. And so it was somewhat semi-climatic, but the Bohemian waxwings were also a lifer, and they flew into the pine tree that was right by the missile thrush bush. So I got to see them. So I got 2 lifers in 5 minutes. It was great. It was awesome. No hugs though, no dancing. Like, yeah. I was just kind of, oh, darn it.
Inner celebration.
Right. And I got to finally eat lunch too.
Okay. Well, again, I've got a lot of stuff I want to get through, so I'm just going to keep zipping along.
Yep.
So this I thought was interesting. I mean, I apologize, a very small bird in the frame, but for documentation shots, this is what you get sometimes, right? If you can identify it, that's good. But the thing that struck me about this is you're in Colombia, so you're out of the country. You're outside of the ABA area, more to the point. So again, if you had been doing an ABA big year attempt at this point, I can't imagine you would have just thrown in a trip to Colombia to get some South American birding in. Did you think about that at the time? Like, you were trying to get to your 700? Was it just an opportunity to go there, or what caused you to go down there?
So you talked about the Christmas bird counts that are coming up. Be cautious of these Christmas bird counts, because this is where I actually, somebody I ran into the last Christmas bird count. He was like, yeah, I'm from Colombia, and we do these festivals. You should come. And so this was the year I was like, okay, sure, why not? Also, I am the same Christmas bird count. They were like, oh, we're going to go to Attu. Nicole, do you want to come with us this year, 2018? And I was like, I'll think about it, and then that seed grew into a plant and blossomed, and I did go on the boat. So yeah, it's these suggestions that people make, I do take them to heart and do them.
So you were, and so at this point, even you were already planning on going to Attu. Like, we're going to get to the Attu slides in a little bit, but out in the Western Aleutian, sort of the the mecca for big year birders is to go to Attu, I guess, because that's where you get a lot of these Asian vagrants. Okay, yeah. Well, let me keep rolling along. How long were you in Colombia? Do you remember how long that trip was?
About 10 days. Yeah.
10 days.
10 days.
I'm just going to zip through these. You're in New Mexico, seeing a brown-capped rosy finch.
And I got to, that day, I actually, they were banding them, catching them and banding them. So I got to let go of each rosy finch, all 3 species, and a Cassin's finch as well. So I got to see it in hand. They're pretty amazing little birds. I
Yeah.
love their pink on them.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. They're beautiful. I've only seen one species of rosy finch, but it was special, and I'd like to see more. Much less hold them. I mean, that does sound really cool. You're off. So you're in California. I was excited that you were in California because that's where all my birding happens. And then you're on Santa Cruz Island, so actually in Santa Barbara County. And so you made the trip out to Santa Cruz Island to see the island scrub jay. That's sort of like when the ABA split that species off. I'm sure the people who do the concession out to Santa Cruz Island said, yes, birders, we're going to get birders. And it's true, we all go out there to see that bird.
Yeah, and I was a little worried about that bird because it took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get that bird.
And the boat was going back, right? So
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But they like the blue shirts. I found if you wear a blue shirt, I think they will follow you because they did show up whenever the concession people showed up. Just a
Very
tip.
cool. That is a good tip. I had to include this photo. For me, it's such the California condor is such an iconic bird, and it's such a great shot you have of it. The closest photo I have of a condor is like a little tiny speck that you can barely tell it's a condor. But I've seen other really neat photos from pinnacles. That's really the place to go if you want to get a good look at a condor, and it looks like you did.
Yeah, I drove through the night to get there, and then started hiking at dawn to get up there to get these birds because I couldn't get them further south.
Yeah, very, very tough to get those. I wanted to include this slide. So this is from Arizona, and I just liked that this spectacle of 3,000 tree swallows according to the eBird list. So I've never seen a huge flock of tree swallows like that. I've seen it on video, but I've always wanted to see it. So I'm just I'm curious, what was the experience like just having and I know you've seen them since then, but having so many of those tree swallows in one place.
It's overwhelming for sure because you don't normally see them in these huge flocks, but it's just like awe, like wow. I also think about this. So I was a park ranger in Everglades, and when the birds would take off and fly, they would actually cloud out the sun. So I try to also imagine, if they were bigger, with all these birds flying around, could they actually cause shade to happen?
And I guess, it's an interesting thing to me to think about it too. If one is very focused on your score, your species count, one tree swallow is exactly the same as 3,000 tree swallows. But, I can't imagine that a birder, willing to devote their year to birding would not be, impressed by just that spectacle of nature, just like the huge mass of animals in migration.
It is pretty amazing.
So you specifically asked me to include this woodpecker, and I'm curious what the story is with this acorn woodpecker you saw in Arizona.
Okay, so I was looking for the tanager, and there were all these people looking in this one direction in this one tree, and I was like, oh, what's going on here? Because we all crowd around and look at the birds, and I was like, what are y'all seeing? And he goes, oh, there's a acorn woodpecker up there, and I'm like, and I look just to make sure, and I'm like, yep. And I was like, okay, I wish I could, as I'm walking away, I wish I could take the time and just be like, yes, there's an acorn woodpecker, but I have to stay on task and keep hiking, another mile to try to find the tanager. So, and there's people that saw the hempatic tanager and not the one that we needed to go after. But this is the bird I wanted you to put in here because it's like, when you're in this race and there's such a competition, like you can't just stop and always admire or have this time with the birds and just see what they're doing. You kind of have to stick to the plan of getting certain birds at certain times. And at this point, I was not doing a big year. Like I had to go back to work in June. So I was just trying to get all my life birds, as many as I could, because I still technically in March 30th wasn't doing a big year, even though I had several friends at this point that are birders. They're like, you could win this. I was like, but I have to go back to work. So
yeah, I'm going to keep on rolling. Oh, so I like this. This is the Brownsville landfill where you have a Tamaulipas crow. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. but it's just I think, a very evocative image for, when you're chasing these birds, you find yourself in some odd places. And, I heard you joke about it in one of your Facebook videos that, do a big year. You get to travel North America to see all the landfills and wastewater treatment plants. It's not the place that most tourists would go with their, flying back and forth across the country.
But John, I had the best day here because Dick and Gailey Dean both showed up. We didn't really plan that we were going to meet up there. And there's some of my birding friends, and they're like, we're trying to find the crow. We were here all day. And so we're at the landfill and we're laughing, and there's all these gulls, and they pooped on all our vehicles and stuff. But we eventually did find it. And, that's when you have true friends, if you can go to the dump and have fun and laugh while you're looking for this live bird.
I'm going to pick up the pace here because I would talk forever with you about this gorgeous bunting, another bird I would love to see that I have not seen. And this, I think, is just a beautiful shot of this Prothonotary warbler and this white-tailed ptarmigan. I mean, it's just the sage grouse. I saw sage grouse the other day. I'm up here in the Eastern Sierra, but it was not this nice a view. This is a really impressive view of the sage grouse on their lek.
Yes, I had breakfast with them.
So this, I think, was one of the first images from Alaska. So we're at May 6th now, and you're in Homer, Alaska. So you had planned to go to Alaska as part of this 700 number you were trying to get to. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you were not in May 6th, I think in the account I read, it was right around the time of your birthday in like mid-May, May 12th, that you made the decision.
Yes.
So you're getting close to your decision now, right? Is that
so my goal, another one of my goals was to get 600 by the time my birthday, which is May 12th. And so from Homer, I actually fly all the way back down to California and had catch a ride on the repositioning cruise, which was through my birthday. And so my 600 bird was the Savage gull, which you have a picture of, we'll get to. But yeah, and then on my birthday, maybe after a couple margaritas, that I was like, because Gailey, once again, she was like, you're not going to hit 700 if you don't quit your job. So that was like one of those moments where I was like, okay, I'm already Dean,
who was also on that list of the top big year birders. I mean, she's a few slots below you, but not very far.
No, exactly. And so I was like, and she knows what she's talking about, and I was just like, I don't know when I'm going to have this time and get this far again. So I decided, okay, I've got to do this. I got to do this.
So you quit your job and said, I'm doing a big year. I'm doing a North
Well,
American big
I didn't really say it like that. I asked if I could defer until the new year. And then because I had this great opportunity of a lifetime to do so.
And here you are in the Western Aleutians with a Laysan albatross, a redneck stint on Attu. So we're talking about Attu. So for a lot of people, probably our idea of what a big year birder experience is like is from watching the movie with Steve Martin and their the big year. They make a big point about Attu, that's the place that you have to go. Is that true? Like, did you run into all the other active big year birders who were in the competition that year at Attu?
Well, I was the only one really doing a big year, like ABA big year, that year. So no, and you can't fly out of there like in the movie. I wish you could. Still, but
it's a boat trip, is that right?
It is a boat trip, with John Pusak. And it was amazing. The first full day that we were there, we got 22 coated birds, 3 and higher, and so it was a great day. And then it was kind of funny because then we kind of expected it, like every day was going to be like this, and then John was like, this is not typical.
This is not normal.
Which he was right. It wasn't normal.
It's just amazing going through those eBird lists, and I'm just looking at like, I don't know half of these birds. I mean, I've been very North American centric in all my birding all my life. I'm like, wow, this would just be mind blowing. All right, well, I'm gonna have to speed up. Tarik Sandpiper, one of the ones I didn't really know about, but it's a really cool looking bird. a bird I do know. I'm falling behind, and I really want to get to the end of this with time to ask questions. So I did want to ask you about this Kirtland's warbler. So, we talked about this a little bit earlier today when we chatted about the birds you saw. And, I just wonder, like a lot of like when you're chasing these, these ABA code 4 rarities, whatever, they're not necessarily rare birds overall. They're just very rare in North America. So it's kind of a different scenario from something like this, where, here's a species that was down to an estimated, 400 birds in the 1970s. It's just a very small population. It's rebounded some since then, which is great. But I'm just curious if in birding for actual rarities like this, does it affect how you approach? Are you like more sensitive to disturbance, or what's it like? What's different about it?
Well, for this one, I've always wanted to go to Michigan and see like these Jeffrey pines that they're in, and just be amongst them and surrounded almost, instead of just seeing one of them, so that was pretty amazing. And they just sit up, and they're almost like really used to humans. They're just kind of come up and kind of investigate you. Some of them did. So
I guess they're in that very tiny little bit of habitat, right? That one small
Yeah.
part of the area where they breed. But if you're there, that's where they are, and they're just hanging out.
exactly. Yeah. So that it is a little bit different, but yeah, it's great to see that they still are surviving, and hopefully they'll just keep getting better, and we can have more forest for them, habitat wise.
I threw this one here because you did a lot of birding in Florida, and I realized I hadn't really put any Florida pictures, and I felt bad. I thought this gray kingbird was really cool looking, but I'm going to keep zipping along. This Canada jay. So I saw this bird with you, although I didn't know it at the time. I was on the boat when we saw this bird out at Anacapa Island. So you're on the Island Packers pelagic trip out of Ventura.
Mhm.
We went over and we got this Nazca booby that was up there. I can't imagine that in a whole year of just, all these pelagic trips and all these different, chases, do you remember going on that trip and seeing this bird? Is it?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Even though I saw 3 of them in 3 different counties that year. But yes, I definitely remember this bird. Yep. Mm-hmm. Where it was like covered in all the whitewash.
Yeah. It was not the most attractive setting.
No.
And I was looking at these, and I'm just kind of mentally putting together what's going on. So you've got this sedge wren here in Minnesota, and the next day you've got an eared grebe in North Dakota. And I'm just like, I'm not sure if there was some, important target bird you were going for there. But why were you in North Dakota getting an eared grebe in the middle of your big year? And it seems like you were doing your 100 birds in your 50 states thing at the same time, or is that not true? Was this all very carefully strategized?
So I did a bird trip with the Stoll brothers, and they were telling me, they were like, no other big year birder has done all 50 states in one year that they did they missed it by one state. I think it was South Dakota. And so I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's just throw that in as well to add to this. Not that I didn't have anything I needed to do, but it was just like another fun thing that could be part of the competitive part, because you really don't need to go to all 50 states for sure.
Right.
But it was we were just driving across, so we had to get yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's always interesting to me, different birders have different motivations. They have different things that get them out there and doing it. And for some, it's probably just the number. They're just like, nope, this bird is completely useless to me. I have eared grebe, it's not important. And others are like, no, I've got this other thing I'm trying to achieve. Or it's all kind of it's all whatever's meaningful to you as an individual, and different people find meaning in different places. So I think that's great. Right?
Yeah, but how could you not photograph that bird?
Yeah, no, it's a gorgeous shot. And the eared grebe and the horned grebe, just the difference between their basic and alternate plumage is so amazing. They just go through such a transformation.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've heard so many birders talk about this great black hawk of Maine, that ended up there. So I was glad to see that you saw the great black hawk of Maine as part of your big year.
So it was first seen in Texas, and I was actually down there in Texas, but missed it. And then it was seen in Maine, and I was with Amanda, and we were just going to go down to California Gulch in Arizona to get some better photographs of different nightjars and stuff, and got a text that this bird was being seen, and we turned around, went back to Phoenix, and got on a flight and was there. And then it was really funny because Boston is so hard to get a rental car within an hour. Like you just can't, you can't get on the bus to get over there, to get in line and get a rental car. And so we're following all the Facebook posts about it and everything. And we're getting up to it. We're like 5 minutes away, and they're like, it's on this road. So we find that road, we go down it, and there is absolutely no one on the road. Not one bird or not one car, nothing. And we're like, so then I message, okay, we're here. Where exactly is the bird? And so we pulled up, and we got to the junction, and Amanda's like, go left or right. And I'm like, go right, which was right. And we found the birders walking around, and they're like, oh, you just missed it. It was here. And we're like, so we park the car and we get out and we're looking for it. And we did get to see it really well. But that was also the same day that it, went out to the ocean and then wasn't seen for like a month or so or whatever. Wow. So we were just having to get there the right day before it left.
So it's pretty impressive. You tried for the bird in Texas and failed, and then successfully chased it down in Maine. That's persistence. That's a very impressive chasing success record. Okay, so I thought this was really interesting too. So not this individual bird. I mean, black-footed albatross is amazing, and I'd be excited to see one anytime I could. But you're seeing this black-footed albatross on a pelagic trip off San Diego on August 19th. On August 21st, you're seeing a great shearwater off Maine. So 2 days later. And then 4 days after that, you're off San Clemente Island back in California, seeing more Sabin's gulls. So, and then 3 days after that, in fact, only 2 days after that, I skipped that slide, you're up in Gamble, Alaska again. So It's just, I don't know how you do all of that and bird, like just getting from those points, and onto these boats, that would be exhausting to me. So I'm curious, was that normal? Was that a particularly intense part of your year? How do you do that?
Definitely. And so, so I was on the pelagic boat, and that was, I had gone out with the scouting before that. So it was actually a really fun boat trip for me, because I had really gotten the things except for Guadalupe and Merlet, which I never did get in my year. And so, so that was a lot of the big year birders were on that boat, if I remember correctly. I think it was the August one. So it was just fun to catch up and chat. And I was definitely, a little more laid back on that boat. And then I had already planned to fly to go get the red-billed tropic bird that was being seen in Maine, all religiously. And so my friends were like, okay, we're going to be up there and, flying back into Boston and going with them up to Maine. We get there, and I think we missed that bird by like 18 hours or something.
I did not see red-billed tropic bird in the photos from that Maine trip.
Not on that one. So then I flew back because I was on the boat out of Dana Point, and that is where I got the red-billed tropic bird, and I was extremely happy. And
so you missed the one in Maine, but you went and got one in California.
Exactly. And then that was so that boat we got on it, so I had gone on a previous the 24th. I had gone on just a little boat out looking for birds, and then this boat it doesn't go always at 2 in the morning, but this time we had to get on the boat at 2 in. So I stayed up, got on the boat we didn't start birding until like 2:15. Really, I was hoping we were leaving the harbor at 2:00, but that wasn't the case. And so then we put our sleeping bags down, and we got maybe 3 hours of sleep. And then I was up with the sun because all the birders are talking and birds are starting to fly around. So you get up, put away your sleeping gear, and then, all day birding. We didn't get back till I believe it was somewhere around 9 or 10 o'clock that night. Then I took an Uber from that harbor all the way to LAX. And Uber guy couldn't find me. And then finally I had to just walk all my 2 bags over there. And then I had to repack them. And he was like, oh, there's this being let out now, this concert, but we're going to get off on these side streets. Like he was telling me all this different mapping around. I'm like, okay, just wait me 5 minutes before we get to the airport. So I crashed and slept a little bit, and then got to the airport, and I was scared because like he was like, well, what time is your flight? Because we got back, I think like a half an hour to an hour later than we were supposed to, because I allowed myself, we were supposed to get back at 9. We got back at 10. And then it was like an hour to the airport and then get through. And I did not have TSA pre-check at all during this.
There just aren't enough hours after a while.
And then I got to my gate and they moved the gate and I was so exhausted. So I might have had like 4 hours of sleep at this point in 48 hours. And I was scared that if I sat down, I'd fall asleep. So I just stood up. And I was also scared that I was like, I've never fallen asleep standing, but I think it's possible. And then, so I got on the plane and luckily it wasn't very full. And I just laid out on 3 of the seats and slept. So then I got to Anchorage and then I had a layover there. And then I caught the plane to Nome. And then I had to buy food for the 3 weeks that I was going to be there. So a lady picked me up from the airport, took me to the grocery store, and then helped me pack my stuff and then put it, take it back to the airport. And then we went birding, of course. And then she brought me back to the airport. And then from there, I fell asleep on the plane. Like I was the only person on this plane and going to gamble. And I fell asleep several times. Like I kept trying to stay awake during the landing just to be able to see the island and everything, but I couldn't. And so I landed. And Paul Lehman picked me up with the 4-wheel or the not a 4-wheel drive, the 4-wheelers. And then he was like, okay, get settled. And then we're going to go back out. There's like 3 birds. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a power nap. And I slept. So I think I landed like 3 in the afternoon and I slept till 10. And they said that they kept calling me for dinner. And I kept saying, oh yeah, I'm coming. And I don't remember
back
that
to sleep
at all. Yeah.
Your 7-hour power nap. Well, I mean,
Right.
you know, at that point, I think your body just tells you, okay,
Oh yeah, no more.
you want to make it to the end of the year. You got to catch up on some of this sleep you've been deferring.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, I'm going to try and catch up. I'm just going to skip past all these great birds. I'm going to skip past the Ross's Gulf. So you're in Hawaii. So starting in 2016, the ABA expanded the ABA area to include Hawaii. And this was, I think, the first of, I want to say 3 trips that you made to Hawaii in the second half of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So I would talk about the Hawaiian birds, but I have to ask, like, if you could go back in time and you had magical powers and you could change that decision by the ABA, you could make it so that you could have done your 2018 big year just in the traditional North American area, North America, north of Mexico, not including Hawaii. You would have saved a lot of time flying back and forth across the Pacific. Would you have preferred that, or do you like it the way it was, where you got to go see all these amazing Hawaiian birds?
Well, I'm really glad I got to see these amazing Hawaiian birds. But it is very, very difficult to bird in Hawaii. Some of these places are very, like, you can't go without a guide. And so trying to get match schedules up in order to do that is very difficult. There's the lottery system with the Nature Conservancy there on Maui, just to try to get into, and they have docents and, they're not like, and they say specifically, this is not for birders. And it's like, so we get down to the end of the boardwalk, basically, which is, it takes you about an hour because we stop and we talk about the plants and all this other stuff. But that's the only place where the 2 birds are for me. So I'm like constantly looking and everything. And then it's like, oh, it's raining, so let's head back. And I'm like, of course it's raining. We're in Hawaii. And I'm like, no, we still have time. So we get back to the vehicle. And what's really frustrating is that we still have like an hour and a half left of our time that we are allotted to be in there. And so I would just be like, oh,
And they won't let you just bail and go out on your own. You mean you've got to be escorted the whole
you have
time?
to be with the docents. Yeah. So that's really frustrating because I would put in the time, but
Yeah.
You can't.
I mean, it is on the other, I mean, it is a worthy thing they're doing, trying to save these birds that are, so they've lost so many species, and the ones that are there that are threatened, it's a big deal. So, well, I would talk about that the rest of the time, but so you're back in Hawaii. I included this one as you're in Louisiana in November, because I think that's just the quintessential shot of an American bittern. Like if you can get a photo of a bittern that looks like that, except there's been one out at the North Campus Open Space near UC Santa Barbara that's just been hanging out in the open, and I'm up here in the mountains, so I can't go look for it. But people have been getting these amazing shots without the reeds in the way. But I thought it was a cool shot.
Thank you.
Sandhill Cranes. I would love to talk about Sandhill Cranes, but I'm going to keep on going. Here you are back. You have your EEWE, which I remember probably 30 years ago now. I saw an EEWE in Hawaii, and it was, an amazing moment for me. Even then, I wasn't as intensely into birding as I am now. But it's one I always wanted to see. I was like, it just seemed like such a quintessentially Hawaiian bird. These amazing species they have there. And I think, is this your last trip to Hawaii when you saw this?
Yes. This was my last trip.
And so, like mid-December, where are you at in terms of the competition? Is it basically all over at this point? You know nobody's going to catch you? Were you close to anyone else? Was that not even a part of what you were concerned about?
Well, like people of that year, nobody really was doing a big year that was, pushing me so much. I was just mainly looking at years past and seeing who I needed to compete with that way. So it was a different kind of competition, I guess.
And how are you feeling at this point? Is it
good? And I was still hoping, like, I really wanted to have a bird on the last day, because we all start January 1st. So I really wanted to have one on my last day, or a lifer, or somewhere really close to the very end, but that was not to be. So unfortunately.
Well,
there was yeah.
Oh, you mentioned this bird that you were interested in talking about. This is a field fair in Canada that you chased after.
I did. And there was a field fair earlier that year in Canada. But at that point, I wasn't jumping on planes. Like, I didn't start jumping on planes until June to like chase birds. And so I was very grateful that another one showed up. And it was really interesting here. So I flew in and got a rental car, I drove up there, and there were some Canadians that were looking for the bird and everything. And it was really cold. So we would all like sit in our car for a while and wait to see if the birds would come back. And the field fair would come in with the robins. So as soon as all the robins were starting to come in, the birders would get out of their vehicle, and then it would scare all the robins, including the field fair, away. And so then the Canadians gave up, but there was still daylight for me. And I was like, well, I'm not going anywhere, and I have to get this bird. And there was me and this other fellow that stuck it out. And he was like going to run right for the bird. And this is where I want to caution you. Like, I know you really want to see these birds, especially these rare ones, but what I learned is you have to be quiet. Some people are like, oh, you don't need to be quiet, the birds just fly around. But in this case, it didn't just fly around, come every 15 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
And the guy, I was able to stop him from, I was like, let's just let the bird forage and do its normal thing, and then we'll get to see it, and then we can kind of move to a better position without the sticks in the way and stuff. And luckily I was able to talk him down off the ledge and and be able to get some really good shots, as well as being able to just spend time with him. Like I needed to go back to the airport, but I was like, well, if I have to catch another flight, that's okay, because I really wanted to see it and experience it, but we're also losing the light too at this point.
So this is like the last light of day. That's why
this is like the last 15 minutes of daylight. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. This is actually the last photo that you posted in eBird from your big year. Anything special about this bird you had in Arkansas that you want to share?
It was my last long spur. It was a lifer for me. And I didn't think that was going to be my last bird. I felt like I'd still have like one more good chase, but I did, it was like the strangest airport. 'Cause like you sign your in on this page, and that you just go out there where the runway is. So no TSA, no foot. I had no bags, and then you just walk around. And
Were there other birders there for this bird, or was it just you?
nope, just me again. When I got this bird, and like I wanted to make sure I got a picture of it. I tried to get a picture. I was like, when I started it, I was like, I'll just do a photo big year, like not knowing that I was even gonna do anything like this, for sure. But yeah.
I'm curious if you did a lot of guided experiences, right? You had these tours like out to Attu, or these pelagic trips where you've got, guides, finding the birds and pointing them out. But you also obviously did a lot of stuff just on your own. Do you have a preference? Like, is one or the other better for you, guided versus solo?
I feel like the company definitely has a lot to do with it. There was one birding couple that I met in Southern California, and they were telling me about their trip to Brazil, I think it was, and they had like stayed 18 days, and they go, yeah, you definitely want to pick like a good people, like companions that can bird the same style as you, and I was literally not sleeping very much and birding from dawn to dusk, and then driving and trying to reposition myself to where the next bird was for the next day.
Yeah, so you definitely want a guide who's going to sort of match that level of energy and commitment.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share so we can go back to seeing each other. And I wanted to have some time for people to ask questions. I guess one question I have is just, what you mentioned a lot of the things you learned in the course of your big year, but I'm curious in terms of the planning process or choosing where to go. There's eBird, there's Facebook groups. What were your sources of information? What did you learn about finding where to go find birds, or what did you learn as a result of the experience that you didn't know when you started?
So yes, I definitely looked at the rare bird alerts. I network with people. So I met people, and then they knew that I was doing a big year. And so they would even message me. We'd have each other's phone number. They'd be like, Nicole, do you know about this bird? The curlew sandpiper was one of those where I hadn't even hit eBird yet. And I already knew about it, packed in 20 minutes and headed for Salt Lake City airport. And this is after we got the snowcock in the morning. And, getting up before dawn and hiking the several miles.
And those minutes can really count. Like if you're talking about making a plane connection and getting there, and the bird might leave 5 minutes before you got there,
Exactly. And you don't know. You don't know.
Okay, well, I guess, I also wanted to ask you what you're you mentioned in the eBird profile of you that, you at that time, which I think was a year or so ago, you were still working on your 100 birds in each of the 50 states project. It said you had 7 states to go as of that point. I'm curious, have you finished that? Are you still doing it?
Still doing it. So I still have West Virginia, Vermont, and Wisconsin now. So anybody that's knows people in that state, so I would love to connect and go birding.
And it's again, I think it's such a cool project, because you look at those maps in eBird on people's profile pages, and some people have all the states colored in, but then you click on the state, you're like, oh yeah, you had 12 species in that state. Like, yeah, it's all colored in, but that's not 100 species in that state. That takes a real commitment and some time to find that many birds, especially in some states where it's covered in snow with not that many species half the year.
Definitely.
Okay, well, I did want to leave time for people to ask questions. I'm a little over where I wanted to be, but not too bad. So if anyone has some questions they'd like to ask Nicole about her big year, or about anything else about her birding, or about anything, this would be a great opportunity. Feel free to unmute and just chime in.
Yeah, Nicole, I had a question. Do you plan like months ahead of time? Like this month, there's going to be these rare birds here, or is it more like a spontaneous thing where you just jump on a plane, or you just run over when you hear about one?
Well, okay. So after I did my big year, I wanted to get to 800 for traditional ABA, so cumulatively. So luckily, I didn't go right back down the rabbit hole and do another big ABA big year. And so then that was kind of like driving it, like I wanted to. I did jump on planes, and I did accomplish that last year, even with COVID. And I would jump on planes and go get them. Also, my job, I could have 3 days off. And then because I wasn't in a group, like a crew, I could sometimes be like, okay, I'll work instead of Monday through Thursday, do Tuesday through Friday. So I had like 4 days off and such. But yeah, and it depends on the bird. Like blue bunting was one that I really wanted to get because I didn't run for that one, and I still hadn't seen it. So that was one I did get last year that I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want this. And I just happened to plan to go to South Texas for during Christmas time, and that's when the spotted rail was being seen. So I was able to pick that one up. And yeah, so certain birds, I would say, yeah, I would definitely like black-tailed gull. I would go and chase that bird. Yeah, for sure. I'd jump on a plane. Uh-huh.
What is your ABA cumulative number at this point?
Now it is 809, no, 8010 or 810 with dusky warbler that was being, there were 2 in California and then 1 in Oregon. Of course, the one in Oregon showed up after I was already down in Marin County.
So that's the one that you saw was the one in Marin, not the one down in LA?
11 hours later. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
I was gonna ask Nicole, what was your favorite bird that you saw in Australia?
The kookaburras. They're super loud, and they have like a lot of blue on the side and their wings when they're just sitting. And there's some songs about the kookaburras, like the kookaburra and the kookaburra tree and singing and stuff.
Yeah. And then I was also going to ask, what's your favorite bird in general?
My favorite bird is the anhinga for the East Coast. The West Coast, I like the dippers, American dipper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. Any other questions for Nicole? Going once.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you keep in touch? Were you keeping in touch with all like the big ear bird people, or were you just sort of doing it on your own?
So I wanted to also bird with as many big ear birders before me. And I did actually bird with quite a few of them. So that was exciting too, to have them bird with me on my big ear.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think you ever would do another ABA big year? Is it something you might try at some point?
I don't know. I really want to see more birds like out of the country instead of chasing that just one bird.
Yeah.
And see more of the birds out globally outside our spot.
Well, there's always the global big year option, which, if you look at what they do.
I don't know how they do that. That's a whole different, I'm sure, mindset. Yeah, for sure. Right now, I'm just working on my California list. I want to get at 500.
That's right. David Blue mentioned to me that the person who contacted you on my behalf about this meeting mentioned that, you were doing that you were, because I see you show up in eBird, even locally in Santa Barbara a fair amount.
Yes.
So, and this is for your California list. You're trying to get that number higher?
Yes, to 500. So I'm at 451 now.
Wow.
And live there. I don't live there.
Right. I was going to say, so, and you're living in like it mentioned, you were in Tennessee at one point. You mentioned Georgia, somewhere in that vicinity.
I migrate. Right now I'm in Medford, Oregon.
Well, that's exciting. Okay. Well, I just want to thank you again. It was really fun for me to be able to chat with you. And, it was just neat to kind of see a little bit of what that experience is like. Doing big years is, I think, a dream of a lot of birders, and it's something that I the armchair version of it, like reading a book about it or watching a movie about it. I think that's about as much fun as I could have doing it. I think by the time I was, on the second or third day of 2 hours of sleep, it would cease to be much fun. So I'm very impressed.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right.
I would like to
Yeah.
give a shout out.
Yeah.
Hello, David and Linda Blue.
Yeah, I don't know if they're in the meeting or maybe they'll watch it after the fact. We do archive these. But yeah, I like David and Linda a lot. I see them in a lot of the same places because we're birding in Santa Barbara County and we're chasing the same Santa Barbara species.
Yes. Thank y'all for finding really good birds.
Well, it's a different kind of thing when you're focused in, one little geographic area. I mean, for me, a 2-hour chase is like, oh, that's a big deal. But, for you, 2 hours is like, oh, what am I going to do,
Definitely
between bites
go
of my
for
sandwich.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. I hope to see some of you on Saturday. And check out the website. We'll see what we're going to talk about next month. And look for information on the upcoming Christmas bird count, because that'll be a lot of fun, too. All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.